21b1, okay.
21b1 in the art scroll, 21b in the regular Gemara, and we're going to start from Amar Le Rav Nachman bar Rav Chizda to Rav Nachman bar Yitzchok.
Right.
Is in the Gemara, it's on the 6th line from the top of the page. Okay. So the previous Gemara that we learned had a very interesting. It had an interesting insight, and that is that when you have a certain plague and it's causing people to die, there are some times when we're going to consider it a real plague, and sometimes we're going to just consider it, it's like a bad day or something crazy happened, but it's not like a plague that's going to continue. And so the understanding in the Mishnah was that only if you have a city of 500 men and 3 people die in 3 consecutive days, then that would be a situation of a plague. But if they all died in one day, then that was not a reason to consider it a plague. And the Gemara here, well, the Gemara brought a brisa that followed that logic, and it mentioned that if it happens in one day or in 4 days, that's not a plague. Now, the Gemara brings a story about a city called Droikar, and in Droikar, Rav Nachman bar Rav Chizda, excuse me, Rav Nachman bar Rav Chizda established a fast day, a crying out, considering this a plague, even though it happened all in one day. So the Gemara explained, Rav Nachman bar Yitzchok, the different Rav Nachman, explained why would Rav Nachman bar Rav Chizda do this? It doesn't fit with the brisa, and sounds like it's not following what we're supposed to do. And he explained that no, the brisa is following one view, but there is another view, and he compares it to a case of animals that are goring. When you have animals that are goring, then there's a law that if an animal gores in 3 consecutive days, it's considered a muad. It's expected to gore. It's a goring animal. It's a animal that has gone over the limit, and it's now considered a goring animal, a muad. And if it if it gores once or twice, it's not a muad. What happens if it gores 3 times in one day? So we say that it's not a muad because there's reason to say maybe it was just a little crazy that day. It's people have their tantrums, and therefore, if it gored 3 people in one day, it's not a muad. That would fit with our brisa. But there is an opinion that says the opposite. He says if 3 days makes it a muad, expected to gore, if it all happens in one day, for sure, this is a goring animal. So he looks at the fact that the animal is goring more than once, 3 times. That is the deciding factor. And he says the same thing should apply, or possibly would apply according to that view. And that's probably how Rav Nachman is understanding it. Rav Nachman bar Rav Chizda, who established the fast day, he's following the view of Reb Meir, who says, that if an animal gored 3 times in one day, for sure it's considered a muad, an animal that is considered a goring animal. And in Jewish law, there's a difference between a goring animal and a non-goring animal. A goring animal has to pay the full damage. A non-goring animal only pays half the damage. There's different laws about goring and non-goring animals. So this is the comparison that the Gemara brings between these 2 scenarios. It is definitely an interesting comparison. It deserves some thought, because you could say that it's all about proving what is the nature of an animal. So if you have an animal that gored 3 times, Reb Meir holds the nature of the animal as a goring animal. Now, what does that say about a plague? Just because a plague happened, 3 people died in one day, you could ask and say, maybe that is, it doesn't, does it show that it's a plague? Like this, is that a proof that the nature of this is considered a plague? Maybe only when something happens 3 times you can prove about the nature of an animal. Not necessarily will that prove that this is the nature of these this sickness. So the commentaries do discuss this comparison, but in the meantime, we're just gonna understand it simply that it's there is a comparison here, and according to Reb Meir, there's reason to say that 3 people die in one day. That's enough of a plague and for sure a plague, and according to Reb Meir, and you would establish a fast. So the next Gemara, the new piece of Gemara, is Amar le Rav Nachman bar Rav Chisda, the Rav Nachman bar Yitzchok. So we have these 2 Rav Nachmans, and they're talking to each other over here. We just saw a Gemara where Rav Nachman bar Yitzchok explained Rav Nachman bar Rav Chisda. He gave an answer to Rav Nachman bar Rav Chisda. And now they're talking. And Leikamar Lacey Legabon, Rav Nachman bar Rav Chisda told Rav Nachman bar Yitzchok, he says, why don't you come and move to my neighborhood? Come to us, Legabon, to us. And the understanding is that it's a more honorable place where Rav Nachman bar Rav Chisda lived, and where Rav Nachman bar Yitzchok lived was maybe the low class, an area in town that was considered not a safe area, not a pleasant area to live, not a nice area.
The wrong side of the tracks.
Thank you, Isaac. It wasn't considered an honorable place,
Maybe not so clean, so you can transfer the sickness more faster,
What sickness?
The plague.
Oh, you mean it's a continuation of the story before
If
that?
the neighborhood, if the neighborhood is not so clean, it's different.
Well, the problem is that the area was Rav Nachman bar Rav Chisda, and he's the one telling Rav Nachman bar Yitzchok, come to me.
Okay, so one of them has a nicer neighborhood. He's telling, come to me.
Yeah, no, but Rav Nachman bar Rav Chisda is the one that has the plague. 3 people died in his area.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So it would work maybe shot if it went the other way.
The other way, yeah.
But in this scenario, it's not working because he's inviting him. So you have to say that this was at a different time. He wasn't maybe inviting him necessarily during the plague. He was inviting him another time. It's another story about the 2 people, but not necessarily did it happen at the same time. So anyway, he invites him to his area. He says, why don't you come and set up shop over here? Move to my area. So Amar Le Tanina. He says, we learned it, or I learned it in a brisa. Rabbi Yossi says that the place of a person is not what gives him honor. Rather, a person honors his place. So for me, coming to live in your area, which is much more an honorable area, Beverly Hills or whatever, that's not going to really bring me more honor, because it's really about the person. The person makes the place an important place and gives honor to the place. Shekein Matzino b'Har Sinai, because this is what we find at Har Sinai. Shekol Zman she'Hashchina Shruya Alav, the whole time that the Shechina was there, Amra Torah, the Torah says, Gamatzoin v'habakar al yiru el mul ha'harahu. The tzoin, the sheep, and the cattle should not graze opposite that mountain. Nistalka Shchina, and when the Shchina left, Amra Torah, the Torah says, B'mshech hayovel hema yalu b'har. When the yovel blasts, then they can go up in the mountain. So what the Gemara is bringing as a proof is that the Shechina is what makes the place important. And while the Shechina is there, the animals cannot graze opposite that mountain, Har Sinai. But when the Shechina leaves, then they can go onto the mountain. So what we see here is that the place doesn't intrinsically gain, the place doesn't intrinsically have uniqueness. It's what the person does on it. It's the Shechina, it's the dwelling of the Shechina that makes it important. It's not the place. The place is really meaningless. It doesn't have any holiness. Now, the interesting thing here is Rashi on this page, and throughout the tractate, we do find Rashi here, and this tractate is really questionable if it's Rashi. Many commentaries assume that this is not the real Rashi. This is a student of Rashi, and it got printed here. Maybe we don't have Rashi on this tractate. But anyway, Rashi over here goes through a whole understanding of when exactly did this apply. And he comes up with a very interesting understanding, different than I would have thought, and probably different than most people would have thought. And that is that he understands this Gemara to mean that from the time that the giving of the Torah, Shavuos, from that time until they built the tabernacle and they inaugurated it on the 1st of Nisan, all that time the Shechina was there. The simple understanding, I would say, without would have been that during the time of the 10 Commandments, the Shechina was there. And once the 10 Commandments ended, they blew the shofar, and it was all over. There's no Shechina left. The Shechina left. There's no Shechina there. It left. And once that left, the animals were allowed to graze. The way Rashi learns is no, it wasn't a one-day event. Matan Torah happened that one day, but the Shechina, the divine presence, stayed there until they moved the Shechina to the tabernacle, which was built many months later. Many months later, close to a year later. Why? Because first you had the tablets. First you had the story of Hashem gave the Torah at Har Sinai and Shavuos. Then you had the story of the golden calf, and Moshe came down and broke the tablets. Then Moshe went back up and begged for forgiveness. Then Moshe went back up, and the new tablets, the second set of tablets, were carved out and given to Moshe Rabbeinu on Yom Kippur, and Hashem forgave the Jewish people. And then they built the tabernacle, and the tabernacle was finally finished Hanukkah time, but they inaugurated it Nisan time. So if you follow all these steps, it comes out that the Shechina was there at Matan Torah, at the giving of the Torah on Shavuos time, and it stayed there even after the second set of tablets were given, and even after that until the Mishkan was built. And finally, when the Mishkan was built, the Shechina traveled from Har Sinai to the in between the Kruvim, the cherubs, and that's where the Shechina continued to exist. But what we see from the Gemara, so in any event, that's the way Rashi learns, and the reason he's learning that way is because one of these psukim has to do with the second set of tablets, and the other pasuk has to do with the first set of tablets. So Rashi understands that it's talking about the whole time they were not allowed to go and graze opposite the mountain. Now, the Yavitz, one of the commentaries, Yaakov Emden, he learns the Gemara differently, and he wants to learn that it's really talking about when the Shechina was there and it only applied on that day. and the day of Matan Torah until Hashem finished calling out the 10 commandments, and then the and that basically is what the Gemara is bringing, that the Shechina was there for then, and then as well on Yom Kippur when Moshe came down as well, the same thing. But it went, it left, it came, it left, it came. The point is, it came, it left, it came, it left. The Shechina came and left, came and left. The place is not what honors the person; it's the person that honors the place.
Rabbi.
Yes.
Rabbi Yaakov Emden, he's the Rivit?
Yavitz.
Oh, I thought you said he's the Rivit. Okay.
Yavitz. Yaakov Emden. Ben.
Yeah. Okay.
So Yaakov ben Tzvi, because his father was the Chacham Tzvi. So Yavitz is Yaakov ben Tzvi. So anyway, that's the way he understands it, that the Gemara, it fits, in other words, with the simple learning of the Chumash. That is the simple understanding in Chumash, is that the Shechina was there only for the Aseret HaDibros. That's it. Okay. Anyway, the Gemara continues and says, this brisa, I should say, continues. And who's saying this brisa? This is Rav Nachman bar Yitzchok is quoting this brisa, and he's saying that there's another example. We also find the same thing as the Oyel Mayed, the tent of meeting, meaning the Mishkan, in the desert. As long as the tent was pitched, it was set up. The Torah says that they have to send out from the camp anyone that has saras. Sarua means someone with saras. Saras is the biblical leprosy. So someone with saras is not allowed to be in any of the camps. They have to be sent out of the camps. And the pasuk continues and talks about a zav, has to be sent out of the Levite camp and the Israelite, in the Kohen camp, and the person who's tamei lenefesh, is contaminated from a dead body. He cannot be in the Shechina, Machane Shechina. So all these people have to be sent out of the camp. But once the curtain is rolled up, in other words, and they start traveling, they could all go there. So you see that the place doesn't have sanctity, it doesn't have holiness, except when the Shechina is there. So it's all about the Shechina bringing the holiness there, and the place is not what honors the person. It's an interesting Gemara, an interesting comparison. He's using this brisa to show about where to live. I mean, you could ask and say, what living in a certain place maybe will bring me a little more honor. The Shechina, when the Shechina leaves, yeah, it's true. The Shechina leaves. It's the Shechina was what brought honor there. The Shechina left, it took the honor out. But if a place has, also, how can you compare the Shechina to an individual? It's a Gemara, and again, this is like Agadah Gemara. This is a story Gemara, and deserves. Obviously, there's a lot of hidden secrets hidden in here. But it's definitely an interesting comparison. Yes, Ben.
I wanted to say, why is it not important, the place? If God insists on where to build the Beit HaMikdash, he said, well, I will tell you where. Right.
In other words, you're asking a very strong question. You're saying, the Mishkan is there's no Shechina. The Mishkan, the place, it was all temporary. But here, the Beit HaMikdash, you see, it does have intrinsic holiness.
Right.
Kitchel L'Shaita, Kitchel L'Salavi, there could be there's a concept of Shechina staying in a place, and
we don't go there.
Yeah, but you see that the place has holiness.
Yeah.
The truth of the matter is, see, it would seem like the main point here should have been that the place did not have holiness beforehand, and the Shechina is what made the holiness. And then you would say or on the contrary, a place had holiness before, but the Shechina is what really made it holy. In other words, the holiness that was there before is insignificant. That's
Well,
what
when God decides on the place, he decides where to put the Shechina.
Right.
So both of them are important,
I'm saying, if we're trying to prove that the place around you does not honor you, I mean, the question is, first of all, it's a very practical question. You get more honor by being in a place with important people. If you live in Yerushalayim, are you looked up upon? Oh, he comes from Yerushalayim.
Compared to where? Compared to Muncie, I mean.
Someone lives in Borough Park.
The Alta Borough Park or the New Borough Park?
You're close to 770, it's important.
Yeah. What?
When you're close to 770, it's also important.
Yeah.
That's right.
And especially if you live in the tunnels of 770.
Ooh.
Okay. So anyway, this is Gada to Gemara. That's the way the Rav Nachman bar Rav Chizda explains, and the Gemara continues, and he says, Amar le ihachi. So Rav Nachman bar Yitzchok, Rav Nachman bar Rav Chizda said to Rav Nachman Yitzchok, if so, nekum ano legabe mar. Maybe I should come to you. So if it's the place that makes if it's not the place that makes someone important, it's you. Let me come to you, and why should I live in this important place? So he says, Amar le. So Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak answered back, Mutav Yavai Mane ben Pras, Eitzel Mane ben Mane. It's better that someone who's 100, the son of someone who's 50, should go to someone who's 100, the son of someone who's 100. The Al Yavai Mane ben Mane, someone who's 100, the son of someone who's 100, should not go Eitzel Mane ben Pras by someone who's the 100, the son of 50. What does that mean? It doesn't mean age. It means money is a certain amount of money. 100 coins or pras is half of that, 50 coins. And the person who's basically Rav Nachman bar Rav Chizda, his father was a Rav Chizda. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchok, his father was not a Rav. He was probably a knowledgeable man, a holy man, but he didn't have that level of smicha. So he says that it doesn't make sense. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchok said it doesn't make sense that you should come to me. I'm not because you are you have much yichus. You shouldn't come to me because I don't really have the yichus. I don't have the lineage that you have. You have a much better lineage, so I should come. If anything, I should come to you rather than you come to me. That's what he was answering him. Okay. The Gemara continues and says another story. The Surah Havas Devarta. There was a dever in Surah. Devarta is a dever, a plague. V'shivavuse de Rav like Havas Devarta. But in the neighborhood of Rav, there was no dever, there was no plague. So people thought it's because the merit of Rav that's so great that he basically caused that there shouldn't be a plague in his area. He brought blessing, in his merit. So the Gemara says, it was shown to them in a dream. Rav de Nafishas Husei Tuva, that Rav, who has a lot of merit, Ha Milsa Zutra Le Rav. This is a very small thing for Rav. That means that it could have happened in Rav's merit, but this is really nothing for Rav's merit. Rather, Elamishuma Gavra. It's rather the merit, the reason why this specific case, the reason why this blessing came to this neighborhood, that they don't have the plague, is really in someone else's merit. and whose merit is this because of? Ela mishum who gavra the shayol marit, for that person that lends out mara uzvila, a hoe and a shovel, l'kvura, for burial, which means that he would often lend out
I
to
want to
help.
start moving ahead. It's weak. It's
I'm
weak.
sorry, but after spending that money on it, you don't get to just go ahead now and buy bricks too. Okay, I'll look at the bricks,
That's what I'm asking
but I'm
you.
asking you, do not
I'm
just
not
go ahead
doing
and spend
any-
it.
Sorry about that. Okay, just takes longer for my phone. So the Gemara here says that because this person used to always lend out the shovel and the hoe for people to do a mitzvah chesed shalemes, to help people for burial. So therefore, it was in the merit of that. It's Rashi brings it's a midah keneged midah. It's merit, measure for measure, that they merited that they shouldn't have to bury anyone because someone in the community was so kind that they would always lend out their hoe and their shovel. Now, what's the big deal about lending out a hoe and a shovel? What's the big deal? Why wouldn't anyone lend it out? Probably whenever you lend something out, it often gets long
back.
and it breaks, and someone leaves it out in the rain, and they leave it out in the rust, who knows what. And so lending it out was considered a special mitzvah that this person would always do. That they had a open door policy of anyone that wants can come and borrow it, no problem, no questions asked, and you don't have to put a down payment. They were very kind to the community and always lending their tools and for the chesed shalemes, and therefore in the merit of that person there was no dever. Now, what the Maharsha says, an interesting thing here. He mentions that it could be that that if it was in the merit of Rav, it would have taken away some of his merit. In other words, if it would have happened to Rav in the merit of Rav, then Rav would have lost from his merit, from his own merit, because he would have used his merit up to save the community. But because it happened in the merit of this other person, it was like more of a midah keneged midah. Therefore, measure for measure. Therefore, it didn't actually use up. It wasn't deducted, or it wasn't deducted from Rav at least. Was it deducted from the person? That's an interesting question. Have to look at the Maharsha how he says it. But in any event, that would be the understanding here. The Gemara has another story similar to this, and the Gemara says, "Reikart havas delekta." There was a fire in the city of Reikart. I think we had that city before, Reikart. Yeah, that was that city with the 3 people dying in one day. So it says that the Shivusa de Rav Huna lay havas delekta, but the fire didn't spread to the neighborhood of Rav Huna. So Savra mina bezchusa de Rav Huna de nafish. So they thought, Rav Huna has great merit, and that's why it didn't go to his neighborhood. This is a small thing for Rav Huna. In other words, it could have happened in his merit, but really it came in the merit of someone else. It was in the merit of a woman. She would heat her oven and always make it available to her neighbors. And because of that, the fire, midah keneged midah, measure for measure, the fire did not affect her neighborhood. So that's the understanding of why that neighborhood was saved. So she would fire up her oven, and then other people she would let them come and use it, and so on. Now, Amar Lei Rav Yehuda, they told Rav Yehuda, also Kamsi, there's locusts that came. In other words, it's there's locusts. We see locusts. Gazar Tainisa. So he quickly made a fast. Amrulay, the locusts aren't destroying anything yet. Why don't you wait to see? He said, Amar lahu. He said to them, Zavda Isi Bahadayu. Did they bring a suitcase? Did they bring provisions with them? And that they're gonna eat their own stuff and they're not gonna eat our grain. In other words, is there any reason to assume that they're not gonna eat it up? They're here. This is already a time we should already start fasting, because if they don't have their own food, they're gonna be devouring our food. Amru Leil Rav Yehuda, Ika Moisna B'Chaziri. Here's another story. They told Rav Yehuda, they said there's a deadly plague among the Chazirim, the pigs. Gazar Tainisa, he decreed a fast. Now, what's the big deal? Let the pigs, if the pigs have die, what's so bad? Nema Kasava Rav Yehuda. They said, should we say that Rav Yehuda holds Maka Meshulachas Mimin Echad Meshulachas Mikol Aminim? Should we say that if there's a plague, one species of animals, that it'll affect the others, and therefore even the kosher animals will be affected? Like, what do we care if the pigs have a plague? So he says, Loi, this is very interesting. Loi Shani Chaziri, pigs are different. The Damyon Ma'ayhul of Neinshi, because their stomach, their Ma'ayim, their intestines are similar to B'nai Inchi, to people. And therefore, if there's a plague that's affecting them, it could affect humans. And I was just thinking of how they often use pigs' valve for heart problems. So it's like they seem to have a source here in our Gemara that you see that there's similarities between the animal, the pig, and humans. In that sense, that there's at least if there's a plague with pigs, then it could affect us. It could be, we could actually catch it. Now, Amrulay Shmuel, they said to Shmuel, Ika Moisna Beichayzoi. There's a plague in Beichayzoi. So Gazar Tainisa, he decreed a fast. Amr Lei v'hamerachak. It's far away. What do you? So Amar, he said, Leika Mavra Hacha, the pasuk lay. There's no Mavra. Mavra normally means a bridge or a crossing. So he says there's no river crossing or that's going to stop, and therefore the plague is going to spread to our place, and therefore we should have a fast, even though it's not here yet. But we should make a fast to cry out to Hashem and save us. Rav Nachman, Ika Moisna Bar Yisrael. So they told Rav Nachman there's a Moisna, basically, which is the word we just said before. It's Moisna is from the word mace. It's a deadly plague. So there's a deadly plague in the Eretz Yisrael. So Gazar Tainisa, so he established a fast. Now, you have to think about where he lived. Nachman lived in Babel, in Babylon. But so he made a fast. Amrar, so he explained, in Gevira, if the land of Israel, which is called the Gevira, that gets melted, that gets smitten with a plague, so the mistress, then the Shivcha, the maidservant, like Kolshkein, for sure, is potentially going to be smitten with a plague. And therefore, if Eretz Yisrael is ever given a plague, we for sure have to fast as well. Taima de Gvira of Shivcha. So the Gemara says, so the reason why Rav Nachman felt we should make a fast was because Eretz Yisrael is called Gvira, and Babel is called Shivcha. Gvira, the mistress, and Shivcha is the maidservant. And that's why, even though it's a different city, but you would make a fast even in the maidservants area, because if the Gevira is smitten, then for sure the Shivcha also is in danger. But what about Hashivcha v'Shivcha loy? But if it was both cities are considered maidservants, like both cities are outside of Eretz Yisrael, loy, would they not need to fast? So v'ha amru lei l'Shmuel ika meisna bechayzoi. But they, when they told Shmuel that there is a deadly plague in Bechayzoi, Gazar Tainisa, he established a fast in his city, even though it was far away. So, in other words, the previous Gemara of the story of the previous paragraph is sort of a contradiction with what Rav Nachman is saying. So the Gemara says, and he was Gazar Tainisa, he established a fast. The Gemara says, Shani Hasam, that there is different, Kivan Deika Shayiros to Levi, because there's a Shayara, a caravans that the Levi that would escort the plague. So, or the plague would escort the caravan, the Asya Ba'adeh, and it would come with it. So therefore, because there's a lot of travel from there, because there's travel from there to here, that would be a reason to establish a plague, even though we are both cities called maidservants. But nevertheless, there's shayaras, and there is caravans, and therefore it would travel. I guess what it means is people would take it along, and
so they're accounting for the travel time for it to spread.
Travel time or just travel?
I'm saying they're accounting for the idea that a plague spreads that way.
Right.
It's just interesting.
The only question is, what about the previous thing that Shmuel said that if there's, what about the fact that there's a Mabra?
No bridge.
There's no river crossing. Sounds like if there's a river crossing, then that would stop it. So it sounds like if there's no river crossing,
it has no way to spread.
Yeah. So it sounds like
no. What it said was no bridge stops a plague. Basically, the plague is going to spread no matter what. Even if a bridge doesn't exist, it's going to spread.
No, but if there's a river crossing, I guess you have to translate it that it doesn't mean a bridge. I guess you have to translate it to a crossing. There's no crossing that would make it impossible for it to spread. So therefore it's going to spread. But you have to say because there's caravans and people travel.
Yeah, because
maybe they have a boat.
Right. But what about if there's a boat? There is a river crossing and there's a boat.
Yeah,
so
but the plague gets brought in by rats. Rats jump on a ship. You can't kill all the rats. You have absolutely no idea. All it takes is one rat to escape, bite somebody, and start the plague on the other side.
Right. So the question is, if there was a river crossing, would he have established a fast?
For sure he would have. Because whatever it is that caused the plague would be able to cross the bridge. Or
But
the crossing.
Not a bridge, a river. So
whatever, it'll find its way across.
He's saying that if there was a river crossing here, if there was a river, I would not have established a fast. But because there is no river crossing, that's going to stop the plague. So therefore, I am establishing a fast. But if there was a river crossing, I wouldn't establish a fast. So my question is, does that contradict what it says here that the caravans bring it? And the question would be, what about boats? Or is it talking about that that it basically is the same thing? I guess what you could say, it's the same thing. If there's a river crossing with boats or there's caravans, then you need to establish a fast. If there would be a river crossing without boats or there's no caravan, then you wouldn't have to stop the fast. I guess that's what he's saying. I have to look in Shulchan Aruch, because these are halachas actually that it talks about in Shulchan Aruch, about fasts and to what extent do you have to establish them. We'll have to take a look in Shulchan Aruch. Okay, anyway, because it seems like it's two separate things. It seems like there's two things there. One is about the caravans traveling, and then the other one is if there's a river in between. Okay, anyway, we'll continue with the next Gemara. The Gemara says, Abba Umna, have Asi Shlama, Mimasifta Tortia Kol Yoima. Abba Umna, Abba the Umna, which means a person who does bloodletting. So he would have a greeting from the Masifta Derakia, from the Heavenly Academy. Every day they would say Shalom Aleichem to him. Can you imagine? Like he would get some type of a baskoil every day. For this, he was a bloodletter, and they would give him a greeting of Shalom Aleichem. Abaye kol ma'il yom Shabbat. Abaye, he would get this greeting every Friday. A heavenly voice would call out and say, Shalom Aleichem Abaye, Shalom Aleichem Abba Umna. In Rava, the Rava kol ma'il yom Kippuri. The Rava was every the day before Yom Kippur, every year. So it says, so Abaye felt bad. He said, why don't I merit what Abba Umna gets? Abba Umna gets it every day. I only get it once a week. You are not able, they said to him, who exactly said this is interesting, but somewhere in heaven they told him that you are not able to get to do like he does, or maybe the people said maybe he asked people what they think, but anyway, the answer to him was, you cannot do what he does. He's very unique. What is the special thing that he does? Milsa, when he would do things, in other words, his bloodletting, he would put the men and women separately so they wouldn't intermingle, which could lead to sin. And he had a garment which had some type of a horn attached to it, meaning like a shape of a horn, and the Havas Bezia Ki Kusilta, and there was a slit for the Kusilta, the pricking, the lancet, and the Havas Asyale Yitza, when a woman would come, have a malbishla, he would put this on her, so that he would not look at her when she was, not fully covered. The is leiduchta detznia, and he had a special private room. The shadi be pshite the shakil, or a private place, I guess, not a room, but a private location, a tznia place, a hidden place, I guess would be a better word. He had a hidden place, the shadi be pshite the shakil, which the patient would throw pshite the shakil, the coins as payment. They would put it in, and he wouldn't look and wouldn't see if they paid or not. And this way they wouldn't be embarrassed. Here it says this lay duchta desnia the shadi bay pshite the shakel, that they would put the coins in. The islay shadi bay, if a person has coins shadi bay, he would throw it into that bucket. And the less lay, and a person didn't have lay mechsef, he would not get embarrassed. When a young Torah scholar would come, Agramine Leishakil, he wouldn't accept anything from him. Ubasir the Koi, when he would get up and leave, Yav Le Pshite, he would give him some coins. V'amar Le Zil Beri Nafshach, go make yourself more healthy. In other words, buy something to help yourself regain your strength, I guess, like some orange juice or something after you bloodlet. So you should regain your strength. So one day, Abaye sent a pair of rabbis to check him out. He gave them, he sat them down, V'achlinu gave them to eat, V'ashkinu gave them to drink, Umachlahu bistarki balelia, and he folded some type of a wool piece to wool, some type of a tongue of wool to some type of material for them to sleep on, and Latzafra karchinu v'shaklinu. In the morning they rolled it up. This is a very interesting story. In the morning they rolled it up, and they took it with them. This is very surprising. Again, they're trying to test this. So keep in mind, they're testing him out. So he gave them to eat and drink, and he gave them to sleep at night. In the morning, look at what they did. They go and they rolled up the bed that he made for them, a piece of wool, and they took it with them. The come of an afkalul. They went into the marketplace, v'yashkachinu, and found him. Amrulay, they said to him, L'shaimi mar hechi shavu. Can you, sir, can you evaluate how much these rugs are worth? Maybe you'll buy them from us. What would you want to pay for them? Just think about this. He slept there. They slept there. They took the rugs that are not theirs with them, brought it to the marketplace, and they're asking him if he wants to buy them. So Amar Lo, he said, Hachi v'achi, they're worth this and this. Amrulay v'dilma shavu tvei. They said, what do you mean? You're ripping us off. Maybe they're worth more. And Amar Lahu, Bachi shaklinu. So he said to them, this is what I paid for them. So this is what they're worth. Amrulay, they said to him, Didachni you v'shaklinu mina. These are really yours, and we took them from your house. Amrulay, so they said to him, V'matusa minach v'may chashadtinu. They said, what did you suspect us? Did you think that we were planning on stealing them? In other words, what were you thinking when we were asking you about this? Amar lahu, he said to them that Amina pidyon shvuyim ikla lahu l'rabbanan. I thought that maybe there's some case I guess in the olden days this was very popular, very common. There was a case of pidyon shvuyim, ransoming captives, happened to the rabbis, and you needed money. V'achsifu l'mei marlin, you're embarrassed to ask me for money. So you did this in order to get money to save someone's life. And basically this was a way you would get some money. So Amar Lei, they said to him, Hashta nishkalinu mar, now please take it. Amar lahu, so he said back to them, Me'ahu shaita, from that moment that I thought that it was in order to redeem captives, asachtinu midaite litzdaka, I already made up in my mind, or I removed this money from my mind that it's for tzedakah. So then the Gemara says, and that was Abaye's story. Then the Gemara says that Rava also felt a little jealous. Rava also felt jealous. So Abaye gets every week. I only get once a year that the heavenly, that they say Shalom Aleichem to me. Amrulay, they said to him, Mistayech dekom magnis akula krocha. It's enough that you protect the entire city with your merit, that you don't expect to get every week a Shalom Aleichem from heaven. You're great. You're really a tremendous person, and your whole country is based, or your whole big city is getting is living off your merit. So that's this is the story. Okay, then comes another story.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I have a problem with this entire story.
Okay.
That someone as great would do such a thing because he was jealous of the man that received the bat kol from heaven. You know, we're supposed to accept whatever Hashem gives to us and not be jealous of another individual. So how can a man who is as great as this do such a thing?
In other words, how did Abaye send these students to go test him?
Yeah. I mean, it's not his job. I mean, his job is to do whatever his task in life. If Hashem decides to give another individual something else, you shouldn't be jealous about that individual.
But I think it's in order to learn how to serve Hashem better, that he felt this man is serving Hashem even better. So he wanted to learn from him. I'm surprised that they would take it. It's sort of like a gneva. The question is, how did they take it into the marketplace and, without his permission? But maybe they asked permission. Could we, so maybe taking it was not a problem if they asked permission to take it around, but they didn't plan on keeping it, but when they told him that they want to sell it to him, that was the
Rabbi, think about what you're saying. To ask permission means that the man already knew what they were going to do. So when he comes when they come to him again and say, "How much would you pay for these?" He already, if he had given permission, he would say, "Well, how can you sell this? That doesn't belong to you." So therefore, that's not what the Gemara is saying. It says they took it without asking permission, because if it had asked permission, it would have said they'd asked permission.
No. My point is that they might have had permission to take it out of his house, not to sell it. They might have borrowed it, say, or whatever. But the fact that they sold it, that they were going to sell it, that was definitely that was going against, but they didn't sell it. So in other words, they didn't do a real act of gneva. I'm just giving an example that it's possible to learn some way that they might have said, "Oh, we might be tired a little later. Can we just borrow it, return it later, whatever." And then they're going to sell it. That's when they, I'm just giving an example how it's possible. It just seems surprising. How else would they have done a gneva, stealing like that, or gzela? It's just shocking that they would. Again, I'm not surprised about the testing, because I think that's it's also very famous among Hasidic Rebbes that they would wake up on Pesach morning and say, "Oh, Rabbi, you think you had a great Seder? This Yankel at the end of the town, he had an even holier Seder than you." So he would call his students, and he would send them, go bring Yankel, and let's find out why Yankel's Seder was even better than ours. And he would find out, well, Yankel, what did you do yesterday? And he would see how great, the amazing mitzvah that Yankel did, that he, took a major loss, and he he ruined his life just for Pesach, just to have a Seder or whatever. He did something crazy, and they would learn from those stories. That was a great lesson for the students. Look at this. This man had a greater Seder than my Rebbe. So it's not surprising that they tested. I'm just surprised about the gneva. To me, that's more surprising. Okay, so any other thoughts? Anyone want to? I don't see hands here. So.
I wondered who they offered it for sale to. Was it the guy that actually owned it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Why would he go exactly to that guy to offer it, to sell it to him?
Because they're testing him. They want to test him and see what he thinks. He could have screamed at them and said, "You got novim, you awful people," which is what I would have done.
If he thought he stole it, but if they offer it to him, he should know that they didn't steal it.
when you sell something
A
that's someone
thief
else's.
is not gonna go to the owner and say, here, buy it back.
Listen, when people steal, a lot of times they forget who they stole each thing from. So
I don't know.
we once had a cleaning lady who came to us with earrings that were ours.
But
when
he
people
won't
steal, it's
recognize
hard to
that
keep
it's
track.
his. Maybe they figured he's not gonna recognize that it's his.
Yeah, they didn't recognize him. I didn't know what he
Because
saw.
it's available by somebody else too. It's not just by him.
Yeah, maybe he thought they had another. Maybe whatever. I don't know.
Yeah,
They thought
yeah.
people they come up with anything. They'll do anything, to make a few dollars or whatever. And they'll argue and they'll claim it's theirs. That's maybe he wanted. Maybe that he could have thought that this is the best guy to steal from because he probably wants it back. And when he realizes we're serious that we're not giving it back unless he buys it, he might even pay for it. Because when you need something, you pay for it.
Right.
So they could have. You never know. Different people. When you get
He
to
has
know.
use for it.
Yeah. Anyway, all right. I guess it's 11 o'clock. Okay, let's stop here. Zygos on to everyone. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you,
Rabbi.
Rabbi.
Bye-bye.
Great day, everybody.